Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show with local celebrity hosts Steve-O and Renee. Sit back each week while Steve-O and Renee educate you with live in-studio experts, such as lawyers, doctors, home improvement, and financial experts in their field. Call in and have your questions answered each week at 888-565-1470. Now, here is Steve-O and Renee with today's expert in their field.
Hey, good afternoon. This is another Ask the Experts radio show. We're with you every Thursday from 5 to 6. This is one of my favorite shows. I love doing this show. I could do this show blindfolded now. Usually we have notes in, but about 2 months ago, I started, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter, but I asked you if you've got a question for our guest today, Tina Lewert, board-certified family attorney. Just write them in. And I cannot believe all the people who responded. So first of all, tell everybody, and we're so glad you had a health problem. I'm so glad everything is okay.
Thank you.
But the reason why I bring it up is keep Tina in your prayers.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice.
You've got a fan club. You do, yeah.
Oh,
so I had like we got four that Twitter said, I listen to her show all the time.
Oh, good.
So
I hope I say something useful.
Yeah, well, you do. And you're so easy to understand. Some of the attorneys we have on the show, just like, what did he say? Mm-hmm. What is he talking about? But you're not just board certified. You just you break it down so it's so easy to understand. And I've been through a divorce. Mm-hmm. It's very emotional. And the last thing you want to have to do is scratch your head and wonder what your attorney is talking about.
It's funny. I was just talking about that with someone the other day that, I've heard people say that, like I had this other attorney or I went to a consultation with someone else and this particular person I was asking questions and they were answering them, but I didn't understand what they were talking about and it made no sense to me. And I think that, it's easy when you're in any profession, really, whether it's, in insurance, sales or, whatever, and you're explaining something to, a person who does, you really have to remember this is not what they do. This is not their thing. Even just the vernacular and the vocabulary that we use is a totally different thing. And so you kind of have to, I think some people, they maybe they're in their own business too long or something and they forget that, that they have to kind of take themselves out of it and say, okay, wait, let me break this down. Like I'm speaking to, a child, and I don't mean that to,
well, no,
be
I've told you
but
before, I've talked to so many women over the years who went through divorce and they all say the same thing. I got taken. I got screwed. I gave in probably when I shouldn't, and that's probably the main reason. And they said, I wish I could do it over again. But I think sometimes I wonder if people don't understand something, but they're too afraid to ask, thinking they might look stupid.
Or they don't know what questions to ask.
Right,
like
exactly.
I have, for example, a woman comes in and says, oh, here's my agreement. And I look at the agreement and I'm going, oh, wow, yeah, there's some problems with this. Or oh, here's the deal I have. And or here's the amount of alimony I got. And she's not even making her own expenses because she didn't even know, for example, that she had to pay taxes on the alimony because her lawyer didn't tell her. And I don't know if her lawyer, again, didn't take himself out of it and just assumed that she knew or assumed that people know that alimony is income and therefore it's taxable, or if she didn't know to even ask that question. So, you need a lawyer who can do that and kind of break it down and tell you what you need to know and answer the questions that you're not even asking.
I got so much feedback. People going, well, this isn't for me. This is for a friend.
Right.
And you can tell by
I get
the
that all
questions.
the time. Let me take your card. It's not for me, though.
Can I do this myself? No, not unless you want to come out in really bad shape. But before we get started, tell everybody about your practice. You're in Boca Raton. Got a great office, easy to find. Tell everybody about your background.
Sure. So I am a board-certified family law attorney. Marital and family law is the specialty.
Tell everybody what that means.
Yeah, marital. I always say the same thing when I'm here, that it's a fancy way of saying I'm a divorce attorney. Board certified means that I'm an expert. The Florida Bar has designated me as an expert in that area of the law. You can be board certified in, I forget how many, but a bunch of different areas of law: criminal, civil trial, adoption, appellate work. And there are
very
only
difficult. It's not easy.
It's not easy at all. It's very difficult. It's very stringent, requirements to be able to become board certified. And a lot of people don't pass the exam the first time or ever. It's very difficult. And there are only something like 7% of all Florida attorneys are board certified in any area. In family law, there are 274 is what I saw.
That's for the whole state.
For the whole state out of 100,000 attorneys, or 102 or whatever we're up to. So very few of us are board certified. And it sets the attorney apart as someone who, knows their stuff. And it is something to look for as a client. You want to look for somebody who really focuses and specializes in that area of law, meaning they just do it all the time. They have all the experience and the knowledge and have that extra level of expertise. So that's what board certified is about. I've been practicing for 16 years. My office is in Boca, and as you said, it's on the corner of Yamato and Dixie, and that's what we do. We do divorce, all the things that divorce entails: alimony, child support, child custody, parenting plans. We deal with domestic violence issues. We do a lot. I see a lot lately of modification actions, modifications after the divorce of alimony. A bunch of those going on.
One of our questions has something to do with that.
I have, we deal with relocation, parental relocation. When a parent wants to relocate more than 50 miles away with a minor child or children, they have to petition for that. What else? Domestic violence issues, paternity cases where people are dealing with child custody issues. They have a child born out of wedlock, and they have
a question for you.
Sure.
So, a gentleman by the name of Danny Wilson. I think it's
That's
Wilson.
not a real person, right?
Oh yeah. No.
Okay.
Supposedly his father is Bill Clinton, and he has rejected him. But when it first came out about 20 years ago, Bill Clinton was giving the family like $700 a month. When he became president, he stopped doing that. Mm-hmm. And
I don't know this story, by the way.
Well, it's really coming up because today, because they don't want anything to do with this kid. He's filing a paternity suit. Now, my question is, when they do that, does Bill Clinton have to give DNA if someone files like that?
Well, if he's challenging the paternity.
Okay.
So if the paternity or the parenthood is challenged, then there might be a DNA test.
Okay. He would have to do that, though.
Correct. If he wants to respond and say, wait, I don't think this is my kid. Of course, there are other limitations to that. So there's a statute in that chapter of the Florida statute that has to do with those cases that deals with, if either a disestablishment of paternity, you may be limited in disestablishing your paternity if you've already done certain things. And that could be where you've taken on support or you signed an agreement accepting parentage. So different things can limit your ability to do that. So in certain circumstances, though, yeah, absolutely. If it's never been established or there's never been a claim made, and it's a lot of people have that happen where the cases I see mostly are where you're dealing with a child at a very young age.
Okay.
So that's when I usually see it, is when they just broke up. The child is 0 or 2 or 3 or something like that, and or they've been together for a few years and the child is 8 or 10 or something like that, and it's a new case, and the parties just split up as a couple, and they're just establishing for the first time. When they don't have anything in writing, and they have never put anything in writing, paternity needs to be established. And it's at that point that a father would be able to challenge it and say, wait, I want a DNA test.
Okay. Now, one of the questions on here, do you work with both men and women? Mm-hmm. Do you ever have grandparents? I kind of know the answers, but someone asked, and I said I would.
That's always the question, right?
Do they have any rights at all?
In Florida, no. No. They don't have rights to file for. We used to say the term grandparent visitation. Now we don't call it visitation anymore. We call it time sharing. But grandparents don't have rights in Florida to request that. And usually, we've talked about this before on the show, is what happens is, the grandparents are going to spend time with the children when their son or daughter is spending time with their own children, and that's when they're going to have time. That's when they're going to have time with the children and see them and bond and form a relationship and nurture the relationship. So, but yeah, as far as petitioning for some kind of rights,
nothing.
No.
Okay,
not unless the actual parent, if their parental rights have been terminated, the grandparents or other family members. You see that sometimes in a dependency case where there's a parent who's incarcerated or has a severe, addiction problem and is just not capable, and the state comes in and terminates parental rights. Then you may have grandparents that step in as the caretakers, as the custodians, but that's a different case. Okay. That's a different thing.
What about, do you handle adoptions?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different expertise, and there's actually a board certification for
adoption.
adoption's a separate thing.
'Cause
Yeah.
we had someone who said, I have the means to adopt, and I know I'm going to need an attorney.
Yeah.
But you do not handle adoptions.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
but
a
some
whole side.
family attorneys do. Is that right?
Some do, I believe. At this point, I think it's been established enough as its own separate area, and the attorneys that, I would refer.
Is it called adoption law?
Yeah. I have names, I can give, if that person, wants to call in, and I can give them a couple of names of attorneys in the area that are very good that handle adoptions, and that's their main
You really
area.
got to be careful with adoptions.
There's a lot to it, and there's so many different types of adoption, and it really is its own area of the law, so.
Now, I know we've talked about this one. Is there legal separation in Florida?
No. And that's same thing. That's another question I get all the time on almost every call. And people are going, and it's because divorce is it's an emotional,
it's frightening.
It's frightening.
Scary,
And it's a big step to take. So a lot of people are going, well, can we just get a legal separation first? We haven't talked about it. Maybe we want to do that first. And I have to say, no, that's not a thing. So
what is another option?
People, if they're already living apart, then they're considered to be separated. You can separate, and you can, if you want to see if you can work it out. A lot of people do what a lot of people do. They'll separate, they'll live separately, and they will do what's called a postnuptial agreement. So similar to a prenuptial agreement, it's an agreement. It's put in writing. That will govern, how are we, okay, so we're going to be separated, and how are we going to run the finances, or if they have, support issues, who's going to pay for what support, or is one person going to support the other during this time that we're separated, and maybe they're going to try to go to counseling or something like that and try to work out the marriage. So a lot of people in that circumstance will do a postnuptial agreement, which is it's an agreement governing these things. The reason it's called post instead of pre is that it's executed after the wedding, and the prenup is before the wedding.
So tell me what percentage of people who do this end up getting back together again? Please give me some good news.
I see some. I mean, and I hate to make it sound, it's 50-50. I hate to make it sound so taking
I would
a
think
stab at it.
10% would be good.
Yeah, I assume they stay together because sometimes I don't hear from them again.
Okay.
So I'll see couples that'll say, we're going to do a postnup. We're going to, we have some issues. We're trying to work them out. And, maybe there's an issue of sometimes it's like a financial trust issue. They just don't trust each other, or they want to make sure that if they go to divorce, if this really doesn't work out, you're going to get this and I'm going to get this, and let's divvy this stuff up now. And maybe it could be a bone of contention in the marriage, some of the financial things and the resentment and pressure and who's, is this yours or mine? And so they'll say, let's deal with that now so that we know, take the pressure off, and then we can work on the relationship. And so sometimes I hear from them again and they come back. I have one now that was a postnup a year ago and didn't work out, and now we're doing the divorce.
Okay. This was strange. I didn't really understand. I even wrote him back. It says, how do I file for divorce in Florida with children? Is that someone who's trying to do it themselves?
Probably.
I mean,
I say, call a lawyer.
Listen, please tell everybody, explain why you shouldn't try to do this yourself.
Especially with children.
Yes.
Especially with children. There are just, as we were saying earlier, there are just so many, there are questions that you don't even know to ask. There are things that, lawyers are trained to know, and when they specialize in this area of the law, we're trained to know things and watch out for things.
You're not going to miss anything.
You're going to end up with an agreement. Hopefully, there are two ways to finish the case: either by a settlement agreement or at trial. The trial is what I always tell people I think should be the last resort, because you don't want the judge who's a third party, person who doesn't know you, doesn't know anything about you, and you don't know you can't get in the judge's head ever, so no one really knows what the judge is going to do. So you try to settle the case. They usually require that you try to settle the case before you get in front of a judge on anything. So they'll send you to mediation. You can go to mediation once, twice, 3 times if it's productive. And at some point, you're going to be putting what you agreed to and putting some of the things that are going to heavily affect the rest of your life and your children's lives in writing. And like I said, what I see a lot is people that try to do it themselves, and they have to come back afterwards because they just missed some things. They didn't make things clear. And I will say this: people sometimes that didn't have attorneys. I also see it with people who got an attorney that maybe didn't specialize in family law. and didn't know, or I don't know if they knew, but they, whatever. I see an agreement, I'm going, wow, there's a lot missing here. There are a lot of holes, a lot of things that aren't clear and aren't specific, and then the parties are fighting over those things. And if you leave something out, it's a problem. But especially when you have children, the statute, the parenting statute, which is 6113, is very specific about we have to do a parenting plan for each case that has children subject to that case, and there's a lot that needs to go in there. Who's going to pay, extracurricular activities? How do we make those decisions? Who's going to pay for the extracurricular activities? Who's going to pay for camp? How do we make the decision where they go to camp?
There must be a
how
long
are we going to
list
divvy it
of
up?
things you have to go
what
through.
School district? Whose address do we use for their school district? And how are we going to communicate? How are they going to communicate with us? How are we going to communicate with each other? And you put the methods in, because these are the things people, especially
Don't think about.
They just got a divorce. They're not happy with one another. So there's already conflict over something, or there was, and they don't see eye to eye. So yes, you put everything in there as specifically and as detailed as possible to avoid problems later. So here are all the rules. Here's how it's going to be, and everybody, there are no questions. And that's the goal, is that you want it to be as concrete and specific as possible. And so I just see people that represent themselves that unfortunately don't know to do that.
Well, let's go to break. When we come back, I've got a lot of questions here. So we've only gone from the first three already. But we'll be back. I'm here with attorney Tina Lewert. She is board certified family attorney. She's with us every month. And when we come back, I've got some great questions for you. We'll be right back.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewert is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law case by consistently providing skilled representation, expert legal advice, and personal attention. Attorney Lewert has developed an excellent reputation for providing effective divorce and family law representation in Boca Raton and the surrounding communities. Lewert Law Offices offers legal advice and representation in a wide range of family law matters, including divorce, child custody, time sharing and visitation, child support, alimony, complex asset distribution, post-judgment modifications, and paternity actions. For expert representation in all aspects of divorce and family law, contact attorney Tina Lewert today at 561-544-6861 or visit www.lewertlaw.com.
And we're back. We're here with attorney Tina Lewert. Tina's been with us several years now.
That's
she
crazy.
Does family law. You're
Has
a
it
star.
been that long?
Yeah. And I believe, at the end of this month, we'll be going to FM also.
Yay,
so you can listen to us on FM and AM, and you can actually go to your website. Mm-hmm. Give people your website.
Website is www.lewertlaw.com. Lewert is spelled Lewert.
And you can actually watch today's show. So if you missed part of it, coming in, going home from work, you can watch it on her website. So we get all these questions that I do a Twitter account on this show, and got some of the questions. It looks like some of these people are going to try to handle it themselves to save themselves some money, but in the long run, it's going to end up probably costing them more.
And yeah, the saving the money thing, I get it. Believe me, I get it. Litigation is an immense expense.
But you say you
it
tell
really
your clients
is.
you don't want to go to court if you don't have to.
Correct, of course. And if you have a lawyer who's a good lawyer, who knows what they're doing, and who has a high level of ethics, as we all should, but as board certified attorneys are held to a higher standard of ethics, then your lawyer will agree with me that going to court and going to trial and duking it out in litigation, it creates ugliness, it creates enemies more than ever, and it's never desirable. It should always be a last resort. So it's a risk, It's like gambling, because you don't. Oh, I think the judge is going to do this, and I think no, the other side thinks the judge is going to do that. Nobody knows. We don't know, and that's the truth. And I always tell people, anybody who tells you they know what the judge is going to do is lying. It's just not true. So. I get it that it's very expensive. It can be very expensive, and even settling the case, can take time if you have assets. You have a lot of assets, or you have business assets or complex assets and investments and things like that, or there need to be valuations, or you need forensic accountants to get those numbers and pull numbers together, and then the parties use that to try and settle the case. It can still be an expense, but I always say people spend tens of thousands of dollars on their weddings.
Right, exactly.
And then they're getting a divorce, and it's the rest of their life, and you're trying to protect your children and your financial future and figure out, where are we going to live and how much money am I going to have to live on, and major things in a person's life that affect every aspect of their life, and they want to get it for cheap.
Well,
And
now, let me
it's
ask
not
you,
always. It just can't be.
this sounds like a father. He wants to try to go back and get full custody. Is that hard for a male to get full custody?
Not
of
necessarily. And I always say to people, what does full custody mean to you? Because a few years back, they took the word custody out of the statute. So
Okay.
technically, we don't say custody anymore. It's and the reason that they did that, there used to be a designation. We would designate in our agreements or in trial who's the primary custodian and who's the secondary custodian. And a lot of the times the primary custodian would be the mother. Maybe the mother was a stay-at-home mom, the father was the breadwinner, and just times and schedules worked out to where she could spend more time with the kids. So the problem was people were getting hung up on those designations.
Oh.
I'm primary, you're secondary. I'm the custodial parent, you're the non-custodial
Like pulling
parent.
rank.
And they would think that it meant, even when their lawyers advised them correctly, people would still get hung up on those titles, and they would think that it meant they were more of a parent than the other parent. So the legislature took the word custody, they took the word primary and secondary and all those designations out of the statute. They even took the word visitation out because the idea is that it's insulting that a parent would visit with their child.
Right.
You don't visit your child, you parent your child. And so now we're just mother and father, and there's a schedule, and we call it time sharing because we're sharing time. We don't call it visitation anymore. So when someone comes in and says, I want full custody, I don't know what that means. Does that mean you want the child 100% of the time?
Right.
Because that's not going to happen. And unless, maybe you have, Charles Manson on the other side of the case. And even then, sometimes you have people with major problems. Problems with addiction or crime or different things like that. And there's still some form of time sharing. There's still some form of, whether it's supervised or some form of relationship with the child. So it really depends what that means. If it means that they want to have the majority of the time sharing with the child,
I would think it means that they want the children to live with them on a full-time basis.
But here's the thing. The way it's set up, the children live with both parents. They have two homes. They have two beds and two, maybe they spend a little more time with one parent than the other. Maybe one parent they spend 60% of the time, the other parent they spend 40% of the time. But the idea is that there are two homes and they're shared. So I would have to ask that person, what does full custody mean? If it means they want the majority of time sharing, absolutely, for fathers, that's possible, and we do it all the time.
How can I enforce child support in Florida?
So
if somebody, I guess the father has gotten behind, and it's gotten to the point where
if we do it in the family court, if the child support was established in the family court as opposed to by the Department of Revenue, because there are different ways that child support is established, then you would file a motion for contempt or enforcement of the child support obligation. You set it for hearing. You have to go to an evidentiary hearing, meaning there's evidence presented, there's testimony presented. Your attorney would likely make an opening statement and a closing argument and present, your testimony that the obligation has not been met, that the person's not complying with whatever the order is, how far are they behind, you quantify that. And in certain situations, you can ask for attorney's fees or your attorney's fees that you had to lay out to enforce this to be reimbursed by the other side. But you have to go in front of the court and do that. And it's like it's a mini trial, but that's the way to do it. And
what happens because there's so many people getting laid off nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
What happens if one of them is laid off, has no income coming in?
Mm-hmm.
What do the courts expect of that person?
They expect that person to come back and file a petition for modification as soon as possible. And I see that a lot and especially after the recession. So like in 2007, 2008, 2009, I had a lot of cases where people were losing their job. They worked for a big company, had a big fat salary, and they were laid off, and the company, or the company went out of business, or people that had small businesses that went out of business and lost everything. And the court expects that you will come back and file a petition for modification as soon as possible. And the reason you want to do that and not wait is because the law is the court can modify your support obligation retroactive to the date you file your petition for modification. So if you're going to say, well, I filed my petition for modification now because I lost my job 6 months ago and I haven't been able to pay, you're still going to owe that 6 months because you waited.
Right.
Had you filed your petition 6 months ago, the court could go back retroactive and modify it 6 months to 6 months
So you
earlier.
need to go in right away.
You need to go in right away, and I see that a lot where people wait and they because they don't know, they don't. But talk to a lawyer if that happens. If you're a support obligor, these are things that you need to know, and hopefully that your lawyer in the divorce would have advised you. If something ever happens to your income or your job, call me right away, and I'll tell you, or we'll talk about what to do.
So how long does a divorce take in Florida? So this must be someone who's thinking about filing for divorce.
Depends on many things. A divorce can take as little as 20 days, which I rarely see. I may have seen that once.
Everything's probably all worked out, probably.
Yeah. Or they have nothing. They've been married a very short period of time. They have no assets, no children, and they're cooperative with one another and agree, and everyone's on the same page, and they sign it right away. And so it happens, but it happens rarely. Anywhere from that to years. And there's a case I was dealing with that was going on
for assets involved,
4
maybe?
years. Yeah, and it depends, too, what happens. Sometimes the parties will say during the middle of a divorce, they'll say, you know what, we're going to try to reconcile. Put the case on hold. And the lawyers will say, okay, we'll put the case on hold for 6 months, and we'll file something with the court even to put it on hold and leave it open and see what happens. And they try to go to counseling and say, oh, we need more time. Or, oh, you know what, we're going to talk amongst ourselves. And why don't the lawyers kind of back off a little while? So different things happen in cases that can delay it. And or you have, if you have two good lawyers on sides of the case and everyone's doing their job and everyone's cooperating and providing documents, and if you're experts or you have experts, especially if you have financial experts, if you have forensic accountants on both sides of the case, especially, they're going to cooperate with each other and provide documents and do it expeditiously. If you have a case where you have someone not cooperating and providing documents, that'll slow things down. And so that's what I've seen, cases that take years. Unfortunately, I see things like that. So it can, for a multitude of reasons, it can take a long time. We have very good judges, though, that really, we have very good case managers. I know in Palm Beach County, especially, they're looking at it and they're going, there's certain judges that will look at a case and say, why is this case still sitting here after all these years? I'm going to set a case management conference and call the lawyers in and the parties and say, what's going on with this case? Let's set some deadlines so that you have a deadline by which to go to mediation. And I'm going to set that trial date and have that looming. And if you don't settle your case by then, we're going to trial, and you'll know that's the end date. So there are things that can be done, but there's no telling how long it can take.
Tina, you are so good.
Really?
I am telling you. I'm just like, if you are going through some marital problems, it looks like there's some bad news at the end of the road. I'm telling you, you want to hire someone like Tina. She is. Give everybody your phone number.
The phone number at the office is 561-544-6861. The website, too, I think we actually have there's a thing on the website where you can submit a contact form, and it comes to my email directly. So the website's www.lewertlaw.com, Lewert.
Don't want to do this by yourself. Get someone who's good. But see, I think we have the best. And see, I can call you the best because you're board certified in family law.
I try.
So Tina will be back with us next week. We're going to go to break right now. When we come back, we are going to be doing our AAI Rejuvenation Clinic. I am the poster boy for them now, and we'll be talking about that. So stay right there. We'll be back with more. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Lewert Law Offices is proud to be the family law expert on the Ask the Expert show. Attorney Tina Lewert is a board-certified specialist in marital and family law. Attorney Lewert is committed to obtaining the best resolution for your divorce or other family law